Okay, aloha kako, welcome and good evening, everyone. My name is James Hustace. I'm the president of the Waimea Community Association. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is our first WCA town meeting, virtual town meeting. We missed not being able to be in touch with you in person at our local cafeteria in Waimea to be with you and fellow community members. So apologies that we're not in person, but we're doing this for safe physical distancing and social distancing. So thank you for joining us online. I encourage you to follow us on Facebook and our Instagram pages. You might find more important information, up-to-date, relevant, current information on our website as well at waimeatown.org. And especially during this time, we've tried to keep some updates on there about COVID-19 on one of our resource links to a lot of other sites out there, good sites in our state and around the county. So thank you. First of all, I'd like to recognize our board members for helping put this on. Our Vice President, Michael Donnelly, our Treasurer, Louis Dubois, our Secretary, Frank, our Assistant Secretary, Patty Cook, and our other board members are Nancy Carr-Smith, David Greenwell, Yolson Chung, and Llewellyn Kumalai. So thank you for your help and support in getting this on. I'd also like to recognize the community during this time, especially those at the front of this pandemic, our healthcare workers, our first responders, our farmers, our food providers, and all of our essential workers. And gratitude goes out to all of our heroes out there, those wearing masks, those practicing good physical distancing measures, those making masks, those teaching classes online, those reconnecting with friends and family across the world, those who ran back to work to help so the rest of us could stay at home, and those who put their own safety on the line for the benefit of everyone else, and for everyone banding together and supporting one another for the benefit of community during this difficult time. This week was National Nurses Week and National Teacher Appreciation Week. So I'd like to make note of that and state that we're very grateful for all the hard work that our nurses and teachers have been doing during this tumultuous time, from continuing your tireless care of community members and families and adapting to constantly shifting goals and routines. As we look forward, we will continue to honor you every day. I'd also like to thank all of our speakers that are with us tonight that spend their time with us online here, away from family, but to update the community on important information. And also to add a little more gratitude, I'd also like to mention that next week is National Police Week, and we'd like to show our gratitude for our police forces. And with that being said, I'd like to start off with a community policing report update from our Captain Sherry Bird here in Waimea. She is the captain of the South Walla District Police Station. Captain Bird, the floor is yours.
Thanks, James. Hi, everybody. First off, I want to give a big thank you to everybody for all of the food and mask donations that have been dropped off to our station. I can tell everybody that we're well fed and we have a variety of masks to choose from. So thank you for keeping the police officers in mind during this time. As far as the crime trends in our district for the month of April, we have had no robberies, no vehicle break-ins. Unfortunately, we did have one stolen vehicle, and that vehicle was recovered in Kona. We did have an increase of burglaries. This is where houses or businesses are unlawfully entered into. So we had 6 burglaries in the month of April, and of those 6, we can attribute 4 of those to 4 individuals who ended up being apprehended, arrested, and charged for those offenses. And if you're interested, you can go to our police department, our Hawaii Police Department website, and find out more details about those incidents. As far as traffic trends, we've had pretty significant decreases in our traffic accidents. So for the month of April, just 9 minor, these are your little fender bender traffic accidents, and then 4 major accidents, and those are your more serious injuries or more serious damage to the vehicles. So just as a comparison, in March, we had 38 minor traffic accidents and 7 major. So you can see a pretty significant decrease in that. And then I just wanted to remind everyone that driver's licenses, instructional permits, state ID cards that expire between March 16th and May 31st of this year, they're considered valid for another 90 days from the end of the proclamation period on May 31st. And vehicle safety checks that expire on or before May 31st will remain valid until August 31st. And all other safety checks that expire in 2020 will remain valid for another 3 months. Vehicle registrations, though, that's a little sticker on your license plate. The the weight tax sticker, those must remain unexpired, and you can renew those at the kiosks. I know they have them at Waimea Foodland, Safeway, and Kona. I'm not sure where else they have them, but you can also mail in your registration to get that taken care of. And lastly, I just wanted to, shout out to the community, our officers. We continue to monitor activities out at all the locations in the community, and we're very appreciative of the overall compliance that we're seeing with the emergency proclamation. So thank you, everybody, and everybody stay safe and healthy. That's all.
Mahalo, Captain Bird. Appreciate your time and join us this evening. Next up, I'd like to have Rich Matsuda take the floor. Rich Matsuda is Chief of Operations here in Waimea at the Keck Observatory. We reached out to Rich to further enlighten us about the Farm to Families initiative happening here in Waimea. This Hui has been working together to support our local farmers, helping us to secure food for those in need and for the larger community during this time while supporting our farmers. Thank you for joining us, Rich.
Okay, aloha mai kako, everyone. And I just want to start by saying mahalo to the Waimea Community Association, to James and the officers and directors for the opportunity to just talk about food security for just a little bit. So as mentioned, my name is Rich Matsuda. I've been at Keck Observatory for over 25 years. And I'd like to lead with the fact that how much I appreciate and love this community for how we take care of each other, from keiki to kupuna. When needs arise, the community bands together, steps up. At Keck Observatory, and I know I'm speaking for our friends at Canada, France, Hawaii Telescope as well, the observatories that are in Waimea really appreciate this sense of community and appreciate being a part of it. So let's talk about this Farms to Families initiative. As our economy shut down, we, those of us in the community, really immediately saw the tremendous strain it put on the community. And the observatories in Waimea, Keck and CFHT wanted to figure out how to help in whatever ways we could. And food security rose to the top as a huge need. So tonight I'll talk about that, but also know in the background there's also initiatives going on with regard to distance learning called MKO at Home, and collaborations on producing protective equipment. But back to the food security. Kind of putting this priority on food security as a result of us talking to Representative Tarnas, who's here tonight, Councilmember Richards, also here, folks like Patty Cook, Kristen Albrecht at the Food Basket, Vibrant Hawaii, Connect Aloha. And so we kind of networked and realized how big this need was. And we had learned from Representative Tarnas that Waimea farmers were significantly impacted by the closures of the restaurants and the resorts. And we all know how big a part farms play in food security on the island, and also what makes Waimea so special. So, so what we're doing with the Farms to Families is we've dedicated some of our observatory funds to a grassroots effort to purchase produce from the Waimea farmers and donate it to community food programs. And we're using observatory staff and vehicles to help transport that produce. And I'll note that the observatory employees have been so enthusiastic about this idea that they've contributed personal donations to this as well. So starting 3 weeks ago, we've purchased produce from 9 farms and donated to these food programs: St. James Community Meal, Annunciation Church Food Pantry, Kokua Christian Ministries, Honoka'a Honganji Peace Committee, the Food Basket Ohana Drops, I should say, and St. Columba Community Meal. And then along the way, we learned of other organized efforts to support local ag and food security. Things like the Hawaii Farm Bureau's Bridges program that Councilmember Richards had a huge part in leading and bringing for a more broader scale initiative, and I hope he will talk about that tonight. And then Kohala Center has a full calabash fund along the same lines. And then even in our local community here, Waimea Nui's Umeke'ai program, buying produce locally, fish from fishermen, and meat from ranchers. So in this Farms to Families, we're doing both the grassroots efforts ourselves and also supporting monetarily, either have already or working towards supporting monetarily these other broader programs. And then I also mentioned that on the Hilo side, the observatories are doing similar and working with the food basket to deliver, using observatory staff to deliver food out to the community. So my purpose for mentioning this is because we want to connect and collaborate with community members who are doing this kind of work. And if you know of farmers who need support at this time, that if you can let me know about them, then we can try to see if we can help. And I know Councilman Richards feels the same way about the Bridges program. So, and our plan is to support this through the summer, because we know that we need time for the economy to restart, and government aid to fill in. And so if you have information about that or want to connect, you can email me, rmatsuda@keck.hawaii.edu. And I'll close by saying, on behalf of the observatory employees, we just want to give a huge shout out to these food programs. They're volunteer driven. They're helping our neighbors and our ohana out in the community. We are so inspired and thankful for your efforts. Huge mahalo. And the observatories are just grateful to be part of this Waimea community, that we all kind of take care of each other. So thank you to all of you out there who are doing your part in different ways in doing this. So mahalo and pau.
Aloha, Rich. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for your inspiring leadership in this work and supporting our communities and our local farmers. Thank you for doing that and all that you do. For this next portion of tonight's agenda, we'll be hearing some updates from our elected officials, representing some specifically for the Waimea area, but we're also graced to have Lieutenant Governor Dr. Josh Green join us as well. So we are grateful for all your mana'o of our elected officials and all your tireless outreach during this time. We want to thank you for your time, your busy schedule to join us this evening and update the Waimea community. So first of all, we have, I'd like to welcome Lieutenant Governor Dr. Josh Green. We are honored to have him here this evening in an effort to connect with the communities across the state. Lieutenant Governor, you are a busy man these days, so we appreciate you being here with us this evening. We also understand that after joining us and giving us a few updates and answer a couple of our questions from the community that have been pre-submitted, you'll be making your way to another meeting this evening. So thank you for joining us and for your time.
You bet. What I'll do is thank you, James and association and dear friends, reps, everybody. It's great to be with you. Please, of course, call me Josh. And then, you know, my heart is Big Island. Still, I'm back every other weekend up in Hawaii. So it's good to see everyone. I'm going to run through some updates, and then why don't you pepper me rapid fire with questions, and I'll try to get a lot of answers out. That way, I know that right now a lot of people have questions. Okay. So here we are, May 7th. We have a total of 629 cases confirmed, 629, which is up 3 from yesterday. And I think people are tracking this fairly closely. It's certainly not the only indicator that we're doing well, but let me say thank you to everyone who's listening, and to our council rep and senator members. It's amazing what you guys have done. We flattened the curve so flat that tonight I'm going to speak actually internationally about how Hawaii has the flattest curve and the lowest per capita rate of COVID of any center of population over 1 million people in the world. We also have the lowest mortality rate of any of the states. We're at 1.2 per 100,000, which does, of course, sadly mean that 17 of our citizens passed away. So it's extraordinary what people have done through social distancing, wearing masks, sacrificing very greatly. And some of the things I'm going to discuss are meant to set the stage for the recovery phase, which we will do all that we can to make the recovery phase much more meaningful and robust than even the sacrifices we made. And it is possible because we've done so well in fighting this virus back. As of now, as I said, we had 3 new cases. We've had 2.6% of our population statewide tested. That's 36,288 tests as of this morning. So 2.6% of all the people in Hawaii have been tested, which it doesn't sound like a lot, but that's actually more than most other states and countries, with certain exceptions. Of the people that have been tested, 1.73% of all tests have come back positive. So just under 2 per 100. And that's an indication that we've tested fairly broadly. Some states and places have only tested in hospital settings where people had active fever. And so, of course, their testing positive rate is much higher. We, however, know that of the people that get affected by COVID-19, which, as you know, stands for coronavirus, the D is the disease, which is pneumonia, and then 19, the year that it emanated from China. Of the population, 20, 30, maybe even 40% of individuals who get the disease, get the virus, that is, they don't have any symptoms whatsoever, yet can transmit it. And that's, of course, a kind of great concern, because if some large percentage of our population is walking around with the virus, especially in the mainland where there's a much higher critical mass of the virus, or in Europe, it can then spread to individuals who may instead actually manifest very serious symptoms. And please keep in mind that though the mortality rate has hovered around 6% now in all studies, it's highly variable. The mortality rate is far lower for people in their teens, 20s, 30s, and children, 40s even. The rate probably is close to maybe 1 in 200 people will have serious complications from COVID-19 in those age groups. However, between age 75 and 79, the mortality rate jumps up to 8%, and 80 and above, it jumps up to 14.3%. So if people have, if our kupuna are affected, and also if someone has a chronic illness, say they're dialysis dependent or have very poorly controlled diabetes or heart disease, the mortality rate is very high. And that's why we monitor other things like how many ventilators we have, how many intensive care unit beds, and so on. Something else I'd like to mention before I get into what our hospitals are looking like is what the mainland looks like. And the mainland who have recently adjusted very significantly in the last 5 days what they're doing to prevent spread. And so they had a 20% jump in cases yesterday over the day before, from 20,000 new active cases to 25,000 cases. And those trends are very disconcerting, because at some point we're going to have to make the decision, what's our tolerance to open for tourism? And we'll talk about that in a few moments. But that informs a lot of what I'll talk about tonight with the broader audience, even though I much prefer talking to us here at home. But I'm going to send some messages to the mainland and international community about how cautious we intend to be in Hawaii, and how we hope that people will travel with aloha, and we may even have to put rules into place, because we can't afford a significant surge of COVID-19 in Hawaii. Let me speak to why that is, if I may. So by way of background, we have 2,773 hospital beds in our state on any given day. That number can fluctuate slightly, and we can kind of turn the knob and create some extra hospital beds by using other parts of our facilities. But that's the main number, 2,773. As of this morning, 1,520 of those beds were occupied. That's 55%, up 4% from yesterday. The reason it's ticking up is not because we've had more cases of COVID. Instead, actually, we've had fewer people in the hospitals with COVID-19 because they've been recovering and doing better and leaving. But we did finally resume elective surgeries and procedures in the state. So obviously, we don't normally run only half full at all of our hospitals. We usually run closer to 80 to 90% full. But because we have chosen to not do a lot of healthcare in advance of the virus and trying to prevent spread, we've been very careful about that. So we're at 55% occupancy, and the standard nationally is you want to stay below 80% under all circumstances in case you have a surge, just so people know what the CDC standard is. More importantly than overall hospital beds, though, are the intensive care unit beds that we have. We have 244 active adult intensive care unit beds, and if you include pediatric and neonatal intensive care beds, that goes up to 338. Many beds can be increased. We can also increase that by about 30% very quickly if we use unused surgical rooms. In other words, if we're not doing surgeries, we can turn those surgery rooms into intensive care unit beds. And right now we are at 110 out of 244 occupied as of this moment. That's 45%. That's very good, because that buffers us against loss of life. The reason they had a lot of tragedy in some places was because the surge was so quick and the slope was so steep for the number of cases they had in their countries that they exceeded their intensive care unit and ventilator capacity. Which brings me to the number of ventilators we have. On any given day, we have 459 ventilators available across the state. And we have our share, of course, on Big Island. They have very few ventilators actually on Kauai, where they have more limited healthcare capacity than we do even. But as of today, 67 of those ventilators were in use, which is just 15%. And that's probably the best rate in the nation. In fact, I'm almost certain of it. So we have a lot of capacity if, God forbid, we had to suddenly have many people in intensive care unit settings. We have, over the whole course of the disease, actually had only 73 people hospitalized for serious COVID illness. And I mentioned earlier that 17 individuals were deceased. So the overview looks like that. And what that means is that as people have gotten better with fewer cases coming up each day, we've had a decrease in the number of total cases that are active and a very slow increase of new cases. So we've had fewer people that are actually sick with COVID than ever before in these past 10 days. In the last 2 weeks, we've only had, for the last 14 days, I believe we've had only 30 new cases. So it's about 2 a day. And we are now at 90% recovery rate. We just touched 90%. So what that tells me more as a physician is that our viral load, the amount of virus that's in Hawaii right now, is at a low. It's bottoming out. And that's why we're able to begin the economic reboot. And that's something I think people probably want me to touch on. So what I would like to quickly go through is where we are. As you heard from the governor and the mayors, it doesn't actually occur like you sometimes see in the media where they appear to be jockeying. It's just a lot of very dense documents that they have to vet and then talk to the disciplines and industries and see where people are. There's so many people giving input that once it finally comes time to make a decision, you can't expect everyone to have the same comfort level. So pretty much what the governor does is he sets the kind of the lowest common denominator of what is allowed to open up, and then the mayors can kind of make some nuanced decisions about what they want in each county. So you saw this week we opened some significant part of our economy. When things shut down, essentially 225,000 people, maybe more, end up becoming immediately unemployed. And we're racing through, although it's somewhat challenging, to get all people that have been unemployed checks. Even though some people are going to become employed again this week, they will be due back on employment. And so I so appreciate people that have been patient. It's very difficult. We're now getting through over 10,000 claims a day, but they've gotten now down to the most complicated claims where there are either just complicated information or there's inconsistent information based on applications, or people, like I'd be the first one to make mistakes, believe me, put in a couple numbers wrong or something that doesn't match up with their identification. So you can't just send a check out. It's challenging. So they're going through those manually now. Everyone else should have been processed. Everyone but 80,000 people, which is a large number, will get their checks now. Over 100,000 have received money. But we now will open businesses. So retail will open immediately, essentially. In some counties, it'll open a couple days later because the mayors have made that decision. They did make some decisions that were calculated, like opening floral because it's Mother's Day, and it's safe, basically, just flower delivery. Everybody should still socially distance. That's very important, and wear a mask when they're in contact with others, because we want to keep this curve utterly flat until we know that it's all gone, and in anticipation of what will happen when tourism resumes. Real estate has opened, some car dealerships, some basic health was already open. Electronic stores, things like this have been opened. And I know that large other segments of the economy are very eager, like restaurants are very eager. And I think that will come in the next batch. So we will move now in 1 to 2 week increments and try to open up as much as we can of the Kama'aina economy. And when we do that, we will have restored 60% or more of all of the people that became suddenly unemployed. The remaining 40% are connected pretty heavily to tourism, which tells you a lot about our economy and our state, as you know. I mean, it's not a surprise to anyone. Some of those jobs will start returning, but I'm having the highest level of conversation is every day to set us up for success when that happens. And I mentioned very earlier, and then I'll pause. one of the goals is to demonstrate that Hawaii is the healthiest state and the safest state to return to or to travel to when the COVID crisis recedes, which it usually does. Coronaviruses usually do burn out in the summertime, irrespective of how bad they are. They have historically. So when people do decide they want to travel here, we want to welcome them and welcome them vigorously. However, only if there is safety attached to that. We don't want to have a spike here. We don't want to have to, God forbid, cut back and cut our losses and pull back. I don't think anyone will tolerate going back into home isolation. So we're going to be very careful. And what that means is a multi-layered process for people to come in. And I don't want to be shy about this. I'm personally of the opinion that we should recommend that people get a test, a negative test within 72 hours of travel. That will reduce by more than 80% the risk of having people come in that are asymptomatic carriers of the disease. And I'm vetting those possibilities. I'm talking to the airlines and the hotels and foreign leaders and leaders of other states. It's a large lift, but I think that we're seeing that already started in some other places like Dubai, Austria. Haneda intends to launch that plan very soon. And I think it's just going to become part of the new normal for international or extensive travel, that people will get a test. It will not be perfect, but when you look at the projections, it will keep us more like a curve like this rather than crazy high, because we can't afford a surge. So I think I've kind of said enough. And I also know that I talk too much and give too long answers. So if you ask me questions, I'm going to try to keep them real taut, because I want as many people's questions to be answered as I can.
Very good. Well, thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'll start off with a couple questions here. First question is, in the state, we've approximately tested about 34,000 people. What is our capacity for diagnostic testing? What is our daily capacity if we were to reach some sort of surge later on, or we need to keep testing up? What is our capacity there?
3,000 tests for next day results, and that would be the PCR tests. And we can also test a lot of people for antibodies. We can test more than 1,000 people additionally today just with a blood draw, and that's going to be ramped up to many thousands, though it gives you a little bit of different information.
Thank you. Next question is, what do you make of the fact that ventilators don't seem to be saving people and that doctors in the ICUs are finding a lot of blood clots in their COVID-19 patients?
I think that what that means is that the clots are occurring because this virus appears to cause some DIC, which is disseminated intravascular coagulopathy. Forgive me, it's a mouthful. And then the ventilators, it appears that it does save some, but about half the people do die. And it seems that lungs are becoming very stiff from this disease, which seems also to suggest that there's cell damage and ciliary damage in the lungs. And that is a major problem. People appear to be having a large immune reaction to this virus, and that causes advanced cell death. And when cells die like that, they become stiff, and ventilators don't work as well.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the capacity of our hospitals? And in terms of if we need to address some sort of surge in our hospitals, I know you've given your more or less daily updates showing the percentages of our hospital beds. How can we address a surge if we reach like an overcapacity? And also kind of tied into this, what is our supply of PPE across the state? What is that threshold, and what does that number look like?
Very smart question. So we could go from 2,773 beds and increase it by about 450 beds instantly. The hospitals have protocols in place that would allow for that right away. So that would be very good. We could also improve our numbers of ICU beds by more than 30% right away by using the surgical theaters and some of the capacity in pediatric and neonatal ICUs as we move beds there, because no kids are being affected, almost, knock wood. As to PPE, we have a lot of PPE right now. Because we didn't get the surge that everyone had the concern about, and we continued to buy, we have over 30 days of PPE in reserve, and we have lots and lots of additional supplies coming. The reason we're doing that is because by knocking COVID down so much, we don't have background immunity. So we're playing the long game here toward towards the future when we get vaccination or it burns out. We are going to need that PPE. It would be dangerous if we suddenly had large surges. We would immediately stop elective surgeries. We would immediately pause any significant gatherings again. We probably would do our best to keep the basic simmering business activity going, but we would have to then, of course, shut down tourism, because tourism is going to be the big number. I don't expect to have any surge whatsoever until people start coming back from the mainland. But when those numbers resume, it's going to be serious. To give people perspective, because I'm sure that's one of the next questions about how many people can come here. Everyone asked that. In June of last year, we had 950,000 people travel to Hawaii, 950,000, which is 30,000 a day. Right now, we have 130 on average coming a day. So we are decreased 99.6%. So I'm madder than heck when I see somebody come here and tries to avoid the quarantine. But in truth, the amount of viral impact is utterly low compared to what we will have when large numbers come. So it's when the large numbers come. If we don't have a good protocol, we're going to get swarmed and swamped. I've done the analytics, and just so you know, I don't mean to scare anyone, but if 20% of our tourism numbers return, just 20%, and we don't have adequate protections in place, 10 weeks later, we will have a surge that will overwhelm our healthcare system. So it's a 10-week time bomb, and that's just at 20% rate. Therefore, and when I say 20% of the people, and I know far fewer of them, of course, way fewer, the analytics show will have COVID-19, but that's how fast it would grow. That's why when I recommend tests, I'm pretty serious about it, because that's the way to knock that down.
Thank you. The next question is actually about antibody testing. There was an announcement made today that people may get antibody testing here in Waimea, Camp Park on Saturday, along with regular COVID testing, the diagnostic testing that is. County's press release said that only people who get tested are those who've been confirmed for COVID-19, or plus family members that have also been confirmed, or even first responders. So what is the point of antibody testing those who've had confirmed cases, since they should have antibodies, without any idea how much immunity that would confer? So what is the point of using antibody tests on people who had confirmed cases already?
Yeah, well, let me just say, that's certainly not my program. I wouldn't recommend doing it that way personally, unless they're doing one thing, and they may very well be doing this, which is testing the efficacy of these tests. They might be just running tests against the people we know that have already been confirmed positive, because they want to see how the validity, in other words, the sensitivity and the specificity of this antibody test. That is valuable. The labs themselves, and it's Abbott Labs who have produced this test for Clinical Labs of Hawaii and the others, have already reported data that of, I think it was 800 people, all 800 showed first the IgG antibody, and that's good. I mean, that showed that it worked, and it was very accurate and sensitive. So I think that data has already been done. What I'd like to see we use the antibody test for is to see what the background amount of disease actually is in our society. And honestly, I'm even content to have the antibody test in a way as a screening effort, because though it doesn't do any antibodies for the first 7 days, it still tells you a lot. If you test negative, you're not actively fighting the disease, nor have you gone through it. And I think a lot of us listening right now would like to have that data. And I bet you anything people are going to show up and want the test just for that information.
Thank you. I do have a little more time for us for a couple of questions.
Yes, only because I love Senator Inouye so much.
Well, thank you for staying with us a little longer. I know you're off to another meeting shortly. So let's see, more about vaccines, actually. So the question is about your philosophy and your ideas on the adequacy and safety of efficacy of vaccines and the threshold that we need. I know this is further down the road, looking out maybe a year out or more in terms of vaccines for the general public, but what is your understanding of the vaccine story at the moment?
That's a great question. So first of all, let me say, in general, I just am personally pro-vaccines, although I never go to the space of mandating vaccines. That's just not where I am personally, okay, if people want to know. the challenge with this vaccine is I do want us to have a vaccine, because I do think it's going to be necessary to stop the virus, or at least to help us get further to herd immunity and keep us safe as a society. My concern is if we rush it. They are working very, very, very hard all around the world to get a vaccine, because obviously this pandemic is quite severe. If they rush a vaccine and it turns out to be unsafe, if they haven't done adequate safety standards, it's going to not just set this vaccination process back for COVID-19, but I think it's going to add fuel to the fire of those who have expressed severe concerns about vaccinations in general. And look, I know I have a lot of love there on Big Island, but the people I do aggravate are when I am pro-vaccine and they're not. Let me just say this: I don't want to hurt anybody, and I want us to make sure we have very, very safe vaccines. So we're going to have to check the standards. I will be suspicious if they suddenly roll one out in October. That will seem political to me if the federal government does that. I would be very suspect about that. But I will read all the literature. I can tell you this, that there are dozens of companies working in partnership to do it. The Oxford group was already ahead of the curve because they were already working on coronavirus vaccinations. So they were well down the football field already trying to get this done. University of Pittsburgh has made some early advancements, which is ironically where I grew up and trained for my residency, which is nice. The good people, I remember them well. And then also, I understand that I think Pfizer may already have activated some research and asked for volunteers to test even in our region. So look, you guys know me. I flew to Samoa to vaccinate people against measles. So I actually believe in vaccinations when people choose to get them. This one, because we have very limited immunity, in my opinion, will be necessary, but it's not going to come anytime soon, I don't think, and not safely. It would be a super outlier if it started this fall.
Thank you for that. I'll just give you 2 more questions here, kind of more brief questions, I guess. We kind of step away from health and safety and look more at kind of communication at the leadership level and everything. So first question is, either yourself or the governor or our executive branch, or anyone in that position in touch with the President of the United States, Vice President, et cetera, and how can we get more of that connection happening for our communities and benefit out here?
Yeah, the governor, I'm much too volatile to be put in a room with President Trump and Pence, even though I'm not really an antagonizer on that kind of thing. But, you know, I get upset on medical terms. But the governor is very calm, and he talks to Pence, Vice President Pence, I believe, weekly, and they have been in contact with the president on numerous occasions. I'm more of a guy that calls the head of the CDC and those guys to get the technical advice on the problems. And so I call the head of the CDC and the head of disease control very frequently to just get input that might help us.
Thank you. And the last question before we let you go here is about, you briefly mentioned it earlier, about kind of a connection and a hui with the Western states and our colleagues in the Western states. Is there a way we can band together with them to protect ourselves, protect our communities, and eliminate the spread more or less, and work with them together on these things?
Absolutely. In fact, regional alliances will help a lot. I've already spoken to Governor Gavin Newsom's team because they are producing PPE now, and we may need some of that, especially when the virus slows down there if we have a surge. Also, as you know, we get an incredible number of our travelers from the West Coast. So having a standard of travel and an understanding between them back and forth, perhaps that they get a test and we get a test when traveling, before traveling there, would again help us reduce the burden of the disease. So all of those things are very relevant and smart questions. And if I may, James, people can get in touch with me quite easily. That if they want to do the social media thing, I do like a 1 or 2 minute update every day, which gives kind of these basic numbers. Just do the Facebook thing with me, which is Lieutenant Governor Josh Green, or we also put it out on Instagram, which is at @LTGovJoshGreen, the @ @LTGovJoshGreen. And friends, look, just text me on my cell phone if that would help. if you have an urgent question or an emergency, and that's 937-0991. It's a big number, Big Island number, 937-0991. If you have something that you're very nervous or scared about, or is pressing in a big way, and I can quickly send that over, or an email over to the generals team, and get an answer pretty quickly on behalf of the neighbor island friends that we have. So any of those things would be good. You probably have my email from before. Last thing is just josh.green@hawaii.gov. josh.green@hawaii.gov. But let me just say thank you, everyone, for placing so much trust in me this last couple years, and for still being home for me and the family, which is still very much the case when we can get back. And be safe, because we've done a successful thing. Now, if we play our cards right, we are going to be positioned to recover faster than anybody. Not that unlike we recovered faster after 9/11. We did quite well in recovery phase after that tragedy. So I expect the same kind of thing. This time, though, we are going to have to be safe, because the virus may still be out there.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Really appreciate you joining us this evening, and hope we can join you again soon and host you as well. All the best to you and your family. Thanks for all your support for our communities and your dedication to our communities. Thank you. Mahalo. Have a nice evening.
Mahalo. You too, guys. Thank you very much.
Next up, we are going to be hearing from a couple of other legislators for our district here. I'd like to welcome Senator Lorraine Inouye from our district, Senate District 4 here on the Big Island, to give us a couple of updates. Our legislators here will give us some brief updates. And then, as we kind of did before, Lieutenant Governor had to leave, but our elected officials, Senator Inouye, Rep. Tarnas, Councillor Richards, and then Dr. Solemsaas will be giving us some brief updates. And then we'll be going to kind of a general Q&A session with the other questions that you've pre-submitted and other ones that are coming online. So thank you. Senator Inouye, the floor is yours.
To all you do along with the Waimea Community Association. Can you hear me? Am I okay now? You can hear me? Yes, and thank you for all you do for our communities. And first off, I'd like to say to all of our viewers out there, thank you for helping with the quarantine situation and the sheltering at home, because you all made this possible. And you've heard Dr. Green, Lieutenant Governor, speak about how Hawaii is doing during this pandemic situation. I will cover several things that, as your senator, I've been pretty busy. The COVID-19 has not been good to everyone in the world as well, and for transportation and how it affects us here in Hawaii. Let me say at the outset, we've had some issues with young brothers. As you have seen the newspaper article that I was interviewed regarding the cutbacks. Kauai High will continue to have its two daily service a week. That has not changed. However, the schedule for Kauai High, fortunately, they will be open for 6 days. And so they've cut back their schedule from 7:30 to 11:30 on the Mondays, and from Tuesday to Friday, 7:30 to 3:30 for their Kauai High's loads as well. Hilo has not been received well. Young Brothers has experienced about $11 million in debt as we speak. It does not have anything to do with the $12 million debt that they're experiencing from several years ago. And so they had to make certain adjustments. Maui and the Big Island was impacted. In particular for Hilo, we've had 2 barge schedules a week. We're down to 1. And on behalf of the agriculture industry, in particular, more so our vegetables, our perishables, our papayas, the shipments always go out on the Monday schedule. And if you've read the article in West Hawaii Today and the Hawaii Tribune Herald, the letter that I sent to PUC was to see if they could make changes, and instead of canceling the Monday schedule, but they have kept the Thursday schedule. But hopefully they would reverse it. And why I say that is most of the perishables are shipped to Honolulu in time for the marketplace, including their popular farmers markets, including all the vegetables from the Big Island that also are transferred on to Maui and Molokai as well. And so it puts our farmers in a real bad situation. That means that they would have to truck those scheduled for the Monday barge over to Kauai High, and there's no guarantee that those pallets will be put on containers and shipped out. That's the concern we have. We don't know how they're going to see how this next schedule, which would be for Monday the 11th, is when the barge is supposed to have come in. I have not gotten an answer from Young Brothers, but they are working on the logistics to see if they could respond to my ask. Now, let me also say that with regards to the airline schedules as well, the concern has been, we all know that the flights from the mainland into Arcona airport has been down to one flight, and that's from Delta. So the exemptions were granted to, I think it was United Alaska as well. And so they were actually, before they even got the approval from Secretary Chow in DC, they already had cut back. So thankfully that we do have that one flight, which is about 3 to 4 times a week on Delta. However, it tells us that if you were here a long time ago, when before we had our airlines flying into the neighbor islands from the mainland, we're back again going to Honolulu and then take our connections over there as well. I do want to say that there has been changes as of yesterday, actually, with the governor's new 7th proclamation with regards to how and the forms that we're going to be filling out that's necessary under the new proclamation. As some of you know, if you've traveled, we were all supposed to fill out this form, and it does say the Inter-Island Declaration form. If you go on to the Hawaii DOT .hawaii.gov. You can print it in advance. We're telling our folks to do that. If you're traveling neighbor islands, do it in advance because it kind of cuts back the time that you have to be there to check in. I'll just kind of confirm a little as to, okay, if you're planning on traveling or you don't want to travel, it's not that bad. I've done one travel to Honolulu, and what happens is as soon as you get to the airport, you will be met by the National Guard to do your temperature check. And then if it's cleared, you go to the next table, which that would be filling out this form that I speak about as well. And they'll check it out. You need to do your name, your address, your contact telephone number, which is important, and the destination. And why you are traveling. And so because I just mentioned that the governor did another proclamation yesterday, it was very intensive and it goes, I think, like 74 pages, that there are some changes to this form, which would be distributed, I understand, hopefully tomorrow. So if you still have the old form, you're traveling tomorrow or whatever, take the old form, fill it out. But that also will be good until you get to the airport. After that, you will fill another form, which would also tell you, okay, these are the quarantine rules, and you will have to initial kind of like a 2-page thing. And it's simple. You read it, and if you agree, you understand, it's giving you where you're going, what you understand, you need to use your masks, etc. And from there, then you would be cleared to go. That means you filled out the forms, then you're ready to go to TSA. So once you go through TSA, that's the normal departure point, then you'll be fine. Now, if you are returning to Hilo, like a resident or Kona, and they're good about at the airport, they'll give you another form like this to fill out where you are in Honolulu or wherever, fill it out and then get to the Honolulu International Airport for your return. Or if you're going to Kauai, then you're going to do 2 steps of then reaching your destination into Kona or Hilo. I do want to add with the new declaration, which is kind of important, and you've read about our Senate Committee on COVID-19 making some recommendations to the administration and the type of quarantine that is a concern of them. What has been approved yesterday by the governor is that for all of the transportation networks, the taxis, the network providers like Uber, Lyft, the rental services, and the commercial transportation, and most importantly, the car rentals. If a guest is going to be here for 14 days or more, you are not able to get a rental car. And that came from the committee out of the Senate. And so that's, if you're going to be here in Hawaii, you know that you agreed you're going to come visit, but you know that our quarantine times for quarantine is 14 days. And so the rental cars sort of are in agreement. So I think what's going to happen is there'll be more users on Uber and Lyft, I would assume.
Thank you, Senator. We're gonna move on if you don't mind, and then we can come back for some Q&A. So I'd like to move on to Representative David Tarnas. So thank you, Senator. Representative Tarnas for House District 7. Give us a few state legislature updates as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you for joining us, Representative Tarnas.
Sure, thank you very much, James. Appreciate the Waimea Community Association doing this today. I've sent out a regular e-newsletter a week, every once or twice a week. So if you're not part of that, you're not subscribed to it, please do send me an email. I'd be happy to sign you up. Just reptarnas@capital.hawaii.gov. Please watch the House Select Committee on COVID-19. We meet every Monday morning at 10 a.m. and you can get the information on it at capital.hawaii.gov. And you can get lots of good information by watching this about what are our plans for opening up our economy and what are the metrics we're going to use to do that. So I would encourage you to watch that. Just go to the legislative website, capital.hawaii.gov, and you can get the details on all the previous agendas and what we've done, and also how you can watch it. That's also where you can get information on the Senate Select Committee that Senator Inouye mentioned, which is also very educational to watch those hearings. So I would encourage you to check those out. One more thing is that we're setting up what's called the plan, the Hawaii Public Health Plan for reopening our economy. And that's being run by a number of both public and private sector folks who are putting together this plan. You'll see drafts of the plan on the website, and if you join us on Monday morning at 10 a.m., you can listen real time as to how this is going to unfold and what the rollout's going to be, so you can start answering some of the questions that you have right now. The legislature is going to reconvene. We'll start next Monday, the 11th. We're coming back for just a brief time, probably just maybe 6 to 10 days of session, so probably maximum about 2 weeks. And it's primarily to deal with the budget. We are projecting to have about $1 billion in revenue shortfalls. That's a huge number. That's because our economy really has been heavily affected by COVID-19. We're so reliant on visitors. We haven't been getting the visitors. Our tax revenues have just plummeted. So our projected revenues are down by over $1 billion. So the administration has floated some ideas about how to address that shortfall. We at the legislature have our own ideas about how this is best to do. So we'll be looking at that. The Senate Ways and Means Committee and the House Finance Committee will be the main committees meeting, and they will be working specifically on the budget. We'll be looking to things like, putting at least up to $1 billion into our rainy day fund, so the money will be available to meet our shortfall. The goal is to do that by reallocating lapsing funds, vacant positions, and also increasing the ceiling for our ability to borrow money from the federal government in order to keep our, for example, keep our unemployment insurance fund sufficient so we can keep paying our unemployment benefits. Also, there's another source of money in the federal government that we can borrow in order to pay for our pension fund requirements. So we're going to need to increase our funding, our borrowing ceiling in order to allow the administration to do that. So we'll be dealing only with the budget bills over the next 2 weeks. We are going to be doing it at session and in committee hearings that will be live streamed and broadcast live on Olelo, so please watch. Testimony is welcome from the public, written testimony only. We really have to practice very careful protocols at the Capitol to reduce everyone's exposure to the virus. So, you know, we're not going to be having open public meetings. We still welcome public input, and as I say, written testimony will be welcomed at all of our committee hearings, and everything will be live broadcast. But both the senator and I will be traveling over to Honolulu, and we'll be there for session starting on the 11th, and then we'll go for about 2 weeks. We're going to recess again at that point in the hopes of returning again in June to do some more work. So we're not going to adjourn, even though today would have been the final day of session had we kept our regular schedule. But we're going to recess again at the end, probably around the 18th or the 19th of this month. And then hopefully we'll come back again in June to address a few more issues. A few more key points I want to mention, and then I'll wrap up. I want to mention, you may already know, but our local utilities, HELCO, has announced they are extending their moratorium on their service disconnection through June 30th. So if you're having difficulty paying your utility, don't panic. Contact HELCO. There are some assistance that's provided through them for you if your income has been negatively affected by COVID-19. And they are suspending any service disconnection for non-payment. And so if you get a text or a call from someone saying, hey, you better pay us or we're going to disconnect you, don't fall for that. It's a scam. So please, you know, contact HELCO if you've got difficulties, but they're not going to disconnect your service. Same thing with water, so don't worry about that. The governor did announce a moratorium on residential evictions. If you're having a dispute with your landlord, I would urge you to contact the West Hawaii Mediation Services. They have a rapid response landlord-tenant mediation service that they're doing right now. Both the Senator Inouye and I have requested the governor to extend that moratorium to commercial leases as well. The governor has not yet done that, but we are really pushing that because we have a number of constituents who are experiencing real problems where their landlords are evicting them from a commercial lease during this time. We think that's unfair. And so the senator has written a letter to the governor. I co-signed that with others. And so we're hoping the governor will take that up. But anyone who's having a dispute with your landlord, please contact the West Hawaii Mediation Center. They can help you out. Students, right now, you know, you're doing everything online, distance learning. I know it's not easy. And I know that you may be missing the health center. Sometimes you want to go into the health center for questions about your own health. Could be anything, physical health, mental health, you're concerned. So the DOE has now stood up a toll-free phone number for students to call so you can get some of the same services that you could by talking to a nurse in your health center. I'm going to read the number, but we can also, you can contact me and I can get it for you. It's 844-436-3888. One more time, 844-436-3888. So students, if you're out there and you need talk to a nurse because you're concerned about something, call this number. They can take care of you. Briefly, the SBA is offering loans to farmers and fishermen. some financial assistance. If you're having trouble right now because of COVID-19, contact my office. I can get you more information. Representative Case, Senator Schatz, Senator Hirono, they can also help you out, and Representative Gabbard as well. Thanks to Waimea School, Waikoloa School, your cafeterias have been working hard. You're getting the meals out for the students. I really appreciate that. It's hard work. A number of folks in the community donated PPE to Waikoloa School, so their staff is protected as they give out these school meals. And so a big mahalo to the school, to the administration, to the staff, cafeteria workers, and the community for helping them out. These meals are very important. We have a lot of folks who really depend on these meals for a regular meal during the day. And so mahalo to the schools for providing that. I'll answer questions. I'm sure there's questions about a variety of things I didn't touch, but I'll leave it at that. Thank you, James.
Thank you, Representative Tarnas. Really appreciate your time and being here with us. Next up, we'd like to hear from our council member, Councillor Dr. Tim Richards, representing County Council District 9 here. Thank you for joining us. He'll kind of talk more about our county issues and our county government and more what's happening here on the Big Island that affects our county. Thank you, Dr. Richards, for joining us.
Thank you, James, and good to see you, Senator, Representative, Captain, Doctor, and Rich. Good to see everyone. So we all have been on innumerable Zoom calls and conference calls. I'm sure people are getting tired, so I will kind of skip through this reasonably quickly. Just some updates. Some of the low-hanging fruit for our communities. There's been a lot of push, and this is just hot off the press, to get the green waste disposal open. As of the press release, I think about an hour ago, maybe an hour and a half ago, the Waimea green waste collection is going to be open on Saturday. It'll be open 3 days a week. We have the Keck, Waimea, and there is one other one that is open. We're working hard to get that and more open right now. So the mayor made a promise to us in council yesterday. He delivered today. So appreciate that going forward. Comment was mentioned by Rich from Keck concerning the Bridges program. And it is one program that the Keck has supported as well. The idea behind that is, we've heard a lot of conversations about agriculture and going forward and food insecurity in our county. Regrettably, we have probably one of the highest food insecurity on a county basis statewide. So what we've been working on, and I was trying to figure out how we're going to deal with our economy going forward. Initially, I thought to help agriculture, if we could subsidize it, then we could keep it running. What I came upon was the fact that rather than subsidize it, let's just keep the economy running. I was able to put together donors that purchase the product, very similar to what Rich was talking about with his grassroots effort here in Waimea, and buy that product through the Farm Bureau and then donate it to the different organizations that are getting food out there. This does two things. First of all, it helps feed our community, but as important, and maybe more importantly as we go forward, it keeps the agriculture economy functioning as we go forward. And this will be very important when we look to rebuild that economy. Big thing on that, in this Bridges program, we also are tapping into the livestock industry and getting cattle and hogs into the program. The idea there is to get protein into our feeding. And we're going to be delivering that. That's just gearing up right now so we can get protein out to these different groups. And the food basket is going to be the primary recipient of what's coming forth, but we'll also be working with Boys and Girls Club here in Waimea, Giving Tree, working with Kohala, seeing if we can get all of these products out there. Again, the idea is to keep that economy up and running. To touch on some other things, one of the things we asked the mayor yesterday was to push forth and see if we can get some of our, as we reopen, and we heard the Lieutenant Governor talk about that, there has been a big push out of Kohala if we can get Mahukona open for people to get back to the coastline. And as of yesterday, Mahukona will be open to transit, to get into the water, to go fishing, whatever the case may be. The signs are posted and that will be allowed. I've asked our mayor to consider coming up with a policy if we can start maybe opening up some of our beaches if possible. And again, It's going to be for the local people, get them back to the beaches so we can have some activities outside. We have to walk slowly, like the Lieutenant Governor said, but we can start looking towards going to that. Another thing we are working on, Representative Tarnas talked about the loan programs through the SBA. The county passed in our last meeting 2 weeks ago a resolution to put together a program that we can do quick loans here in our county. And yesterday we funded it to the tune of $250,000. So we have a program coming forth to help our little businesses right here in the county now and try and keep them up and running as we go into this economic recovery. If you need any more information on that, please contact my office. We are coming into the budget season, and Representative and Senator described the challenges for our state. Our county is no different. The budget that was initially presented for the county to consider was $626 million. The revised budget is now down to $585 million, which is about a 7% reduction. I don't think that's enough. And talking to some other jurisdictions, they're talking about a 15 to 20% reduction in their revenues, which is substantial. Tourism is about 1/3 of our economy on this island in our county. So as both the representative and the senator have pointed out, the economy is taking a huge hit and we're gonna have to walk slowly to rebuild that. So as we go into this budget season, I'm gonna ask the constituency out there on behalf of the county and as well as the state, be patient with us because we're dealing with something we haven't dealt with before. And it's gonna take a lot of effort and energy to get through this budget cycle while we still maintain the services that we need to. I know we are running out of time. Let me touch on the mediation real quick here. As Representative Tarnas said, if you're having a problem with your rent, please seek out help. There was a bunch of contingency funds appropriated yesterday to help facilitate with the mediation, specifically for what the representative was talking about through the county. So if you need help with that, contact our offices and we'll steer you in the right direction. James, in the interest of time, I think I will be quiet and turn it back over to you. Again, thanks everybody for listening and appreciate everybody's efforts as we go through a very unique time.
Thank you, Councillor. Really appreciate you and your thoughts. Next up, I'd like to introduce Dr. Rachel Solemsaas. Dr. Solemsaas is the Chancellor of the Hawaii Community College and one of the founding members for Vibrant Hawaii. Dr. Solemsaas has joined us this evening to continue the conversation about the economic success that we should and could look like in Hawaii. And will share with us some potential economic opportunities for our island that can lead to improving our human, social, natural, and financial capital. So thank you for joining us, Dr. Solemsaas. The floor is yours. And I will share your slides.
All right. Aloha, everyone. Aloha, kako. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, even with this virtual setting. Again, Rachel Solemsaas, and I proudly serve as Chancellor for Hawaii Community College that represents our island with our campus in Hilo, Palamanui by the Kona Airport, and our brand new site, Co-Education Center, which is right by Honoka'a, formerly NHERC. It is an honor to be with our community leaders, tirelessly advocating and protecting us during this pandemic. Mahalo to your service. My presentation will focus around life after COVID, as you will see, which I hope is just around the corner. The biggest task at hand for our community is, of course, to be mindful and planful for the impacts of the pandemic recession and how we'll be able to mobilize collectively and quickly for economic recovery and jobs creation. This is especially critical as we know public investments in the form of stimulus funding plus philanthropic investments will be coming. So I welcome us to kuka on what it will take to get shovel-ready projects and a ready workforce that really leads to our vision of economic prosperity. And for Hawaii Community College, your jobs college, we know that this is our kuleana. So the next slide, please. So we all agree that we need to diversify our economy and begin to recognize opportunities that will take care of us, our culture, and our land. Thus, I like to present economic clusters that we can consider for our future. Now, my discussion, of course, will focus on clusters, but these clusters have several infrastructure investments that I think would really line up with possible investments that's coming our way. In fact, the Hawaii Budget and Policy Center noted that investment in infrastructure brings about 150 to 250% return on our GDP. So we know this is really ripe for several opportunities. So next slide, please. So the first investment I think that we could really focus on is on the health. And of course, when we talk about the health industry, very clearly COVID kind of showed us the focus that we need to have in, to address the focus that we have in place, particularly with advanced healthcare. To note that there's a travel ban and most of the advanced healthcare is in Oahu. It's definitely disconcerting that we can do better for our island. And of course, that also includes health outreach, whether it's telehealth, and very relevant right now, it's just that additional skill set for contact tracing. And we're working with Kapilani CC to develop that curriculum so we have something in place just to kind of get our care providers skilled up on contact tracing. Physical and behavioral health is key, not just the direct providers, but the health industry comes with auxiliary services from health administration to health IT. And this is one key part, the environmental health, which is the disease prevention. That includes the water protection and cesspool conversion. In fact, I just ended a meeting with Vi Connection, and we're doing a proposal for a grant to study the workforce need when we actually have to implement Act 125 and see if we can expedite that. See, we have to convert our cesspool, and this is disease prevention too. Pathogens can be transferred not just by air, but also through our water system. 88,000 cesspool that we need to convert statewide. Half of that amount, about 43,000, is on our island. In fact, if we just address the priority one, the critical, there's about 24,000 cesspool. And imagine the jobs that could be created in construction and trades, to water operators, planners, financing, all these different opportunities just related in that one particular infrastructure. The next one is education. We already experienced that even prior to COVID about growing our own teachers and our teachers shortage from K to 12. But what is more relevant is industry-based instructors, those that could really inform the next skill set. And we know we're gonna have a shortage and we need to ramp up. We've been sending out information from our non-credit side called Advanced to really seek those who may be interested to teach and provide some instruction, because we would need that capacity. And of course, educational technology, not just education, but certainly our economics and our livelihood, having ubiquitous Wi-Fi and really addressing the digital divide. And this is an infrastructure investment that we need to focus on. And of course, our capacity to really have high quality education through distance-based learning. And you've seen on the first slide, facility infrastructure, the Hilo redevelopment. Our campus was built in 1959. And so if there's anything that's shovel ready between certainly several of our schools, including the community college, we're ripe for some kind of infrastructure investments in redevelopment. The next one is, of course, our agricultural economy, and Council Member Tim Richards definitely can speak highly of this, of not just feeding ourselves and having food accessibility, sustainability, but our capacity as well for value added and commercialization. As Senator Inouye kind of think it's also the systems and how we are able to transport some of our goods and improve our value added products and the infrastructure that's related to that. And finally, another one is, we've heard already twice about possible budget cuts, even pay cuts as a possibility as we really address. And so we know one of the key areas that we may have a gap is perhaps a massive retirements, as people kind of look into their options and our capacity and succession on some key public service areas, whether it's fire and police. Renewable energy is still key. This is an infrastructure investment. This is perhaps the time we really seriously need to look into our clean renewable alternatives and stop importing oil. And then back, of course, to technology, the broadband infrastructure, both the terrestrial, non-terrestrial, technology devices, and of course, technology applications. So all these are really, really great opportunities. It's just a matter of us creating creating our connection, and looking at it collectively and how we can move forward and prepare now so that when those funds come in, we are shovel ready. And so with that, I mahalo you. This is the final one about a collective call to action about us to prioritize our greatest needs, begin to streamline and expedite the funding, the financing, permits, approval to get it all shovel ready. And then of course the workforce, get them ready and trained as much as possible. And let's put the right incentives for retraining, the right incentives for hiring local. With that, I pow. Mahalo nui again.
Thank you, Dr. Solemsaas. Appreciate your insight on that and some of the goals and things we need to do as a community going forward. I'd now like to welcome all of our speakers to the floor again while we take the next about 10 to 12 minutes answering a couple of community questions that you might all be able to help answer and jump on. So let's see. Our first question tonight. And I know the Lieutenant Governor is not here to answer some of the more executive level questions for our government, but I will lean on some of our elected officials as well to answer some of these. First question is, how do we prepare and strengthen our communities in the event of a second wave of COVID-19?
I'll try to answer, James. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Okay. Our understanding, if you watch CNN and you continue to hear from Governor and Dr. Anderson and our Lieutenant Governor, is that there's a potential second wave that may come in the fall. And so I think that's why it's so incumbent upon us not to let our hair go down, but continue to use your mask, and let's be in place at home safely throughout the summer as well. If you don't need to travel as much, stay in place. And that I think is going to happen. We understand this COVID-19 is really susceptible, I understand, to cold weather. And so we have to be prepared, and just let's all continue to do what we're doing now. Don't give up hope that, we need to do our best to continue what we're doing now.
Thank you.
Yeah, James. Oh,
go ahead. No, go ahead, Councillor. Go ahead,
Okay.
Tim.
Okay, thanks, Dave. Yeah, I echo what the Senator said. Our economy reopening is going to be incremental, and it's going to be staged. Low risk businesses will be first, and there'll be a pause for about 2 weeks because that's the best estimate for incubation right now. And if everything's okay, then we'll open up a little bit more. If that works out okay, then you'll see another opening. But as the Senator pointed out, we have to maintain the social distancing. We have to maintain the face mask wear. We have to keep that going so we don't have a big spike. Because if we start seeing a spike, what'll happen is we'll go back into lockdown. So this lockdown has worked. Now we have to slowly increase as we come back. And the question was, how do we prepare? I think we are prepared. We know what we got to do. We just have to do it. Dave, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks. I would just encourage people to take a look at the plan that is being developed and finalized right now by the state's public health economic recovery group. That's you can learn about it on Monday mornings at 10 at the House Select Committee meetings. Mark Mugiishi with the HMSA is working with Alan Oshima, who is appointed by the governor to lead our efforts. There's a whole website called recoverynavigator.com for Hawaii, or recoverynavigator.hawaii.gov, I think is what it is. And it's got the plan that is basically laying out what are the metrics that we're going to be using, as Councilman Richards says, you know, we're going to be doing it in phases, and certain businesses will go first who are the lower risk. But the ones that'll come much later will be the ones with lots of personal contact, large groups. That's going to be a ways off. So don't expect those to happen too soon. But that being said, we really do need to, as everyone else has said, keep up the social distancing, wear your mask. That's not going to go away for a long time because this virus is going to be around. And as we do start to open up with, as the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, you know, open up to visitors, we're going to be looking at some kind of testing regime. I don't know what it's going to be. And we're going to have to get really good at contact tracing once we identify who the positive, you know, the patients are with positive COVID results. And so while right now we have enough people to do contact tracing for the numbers we're experiencing, as we get more visitors and we get increase in the number of positive cases, we're going to need to increase our staffing for contact tracing. And we've been really pushing that from the Senate Select Committee and the House, making sure the administration is prepared to ramp that up. And then finally, as we have people visiting now and coming in for quarantine, everyone is concerned about compliance. Are they actually staying in their home or their hotel the way they're supposed to? And this is serious business. If you don't comply, it's a misdemeanor. You know, you can get jailed for this. It's thousands of dollars in fines. You know, our police have other things to do besides track down these people who aren't following quarantine. And kudos to Captain Bird and her team with the police, because they're being asked to do a lot of things they never had to do before. But, you know, as the Lieutenant Governor said, if people are going to come here, they got to play by the rules, and we do have to be prepared for it. We're not there yet, but everyone knows we have to open up our visitor economy. We just are going to do it slowly, and I want to manage people's expectations. It's not going to be fast.
Thank you, Representative. Move on to another question here. And maybe Mr. Matsuda can even jump on this with his connection with farm to families and working with our local farmers. Question is more about how do we become more self-reliant in the state? How do we push that envelope and really wean ourselves off a lot of imported products?
Well, Rich, why don't you go ahead and talk? And I think Councilman Richards has also been working on that as well. So Rich Matsuda, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I'll just say that this is not an area of expertise for me at all, except that when we dove in to try and help, it was amazing. The spirit of the people in the community working together, given, you know, this crisis. Now, can we translate that spirit of working together, even just long-term, when we don't have a COVID crisis, but just this kind of partnering of nonprofits and government and businesses working together? I think we do that well, and Waimea is a really great place in the Big Island to do that. And I'll leave it to the policymakers to talk about maybe how we do that more systemically. But it starts with the spirit of wanting to help them work together.
Right.
And just keep that going. That's awesome.
I'll add later. Tim, are you ready?
Yeah, I can jump in. Concerning the agriculture, this is one thing, this goes back to the representative and I were sitting on the Ag Advisory Commission together. We have the potential on the Big Island to do this. And we talk about the food self-reliance and resiliency. It comes down to, first in part, with political will to get that done, and then employing that and having good public policy coming forward. The demand in our county is for 1 million pounds of food a day. That's what our population needs to feed itself. So that is very large scale agriculture going forward, but we can get it done. Something that Rachel pointed out concerning the processing, we also have to have the infrastructure to support our agriculture and offer that value adding to our agriculture, whether it be pre-cooked roasts or microwave ready vegetables, whatever the case may be. All of that will build towards the economy and also build towards our food self-reliance going forward. Currently, we import about 90% of what we eat. And the reason we do that is because we've always done it. We've gotten into a paradigm where we import this stuff. This is actually affording us a time to make a shift, to make a change. And I've been pushing hard for agriculture, and this opportunity has come. We're going to push harder to get it done, working with the representative and the senator to get good public policy out of our legislature to support this shift and get the startup going so then the agriculture can function. That's what we need to do. Turn it back over to you, Senator.
Yeah, let me add that at this point, we're really not living up to our goal of being sustainable in local production. As I mentioned, the problem with transportation. So if we're having that issue with transportation and our only monopoly with the Young Brothers barges, you know, how are we going to provide and make sure that our transportation system works with all of the farmers? As an example, we just found out, working with what we're experiencing with the Hilo's cutback, that my understanding, Young Brothers already had cut back transporting our livestock. And if that, and that's a big serious issue as well. I've always said in all of my political life that Hawaii Island is the sustainable island that's going to carry the state of Hawaii in food sustainability. We have the lands, and we're trying, you know, we all work together to make sure that our Department of Agriculture has the basis to make sure there's loans available. And every year, you know, Representative Tarnas and I have been and continue to do is make sure that there's loans available in our farm loan program. And that has helped us. The Department of Ag has done a very good job, but now we'll have to make sure that we can intertwine our transportation system, get our farmers enough capital, and make sure that we also assist with, you know, all of the impacts that they have. Now, it's unfortunate, and that's, well, you know, let me add, and that's why I'll continue to make the improvements with our North Kohala water system for agriculture, because we need to add the water systems. We need to make sure that our farmers have lands available to farm and make it easy for them to get to our lands, leases as well. And so we're trying to reach and make sure that the areas of Hawaii where we have good land, agricultural land for farming continues as well. And so that's important.
Let me
Thank you,
briefly, I'll briefly add to that. Or we have to wrap up, James, is that it?
I'm going to squeeze one question in for Dr. Solemsaas, if that's okay here.
Of course, of course.
Got a question in here for her about the Co-Education Center. The question reads, now the Co-Education Center is under the management of the Hawaii Community College System. How will this budget affect the campus and their employees? And how will it affect the community that it serves?
And that's a very good question. So just like all services island-wide, whether it's Hilo, Palamanui, and of course now Co-Education Center, we are faced with anticipated budget, and I appreciate the legislator are actually convening. We're getting some direction, of course, from the governor through President Lassner and our system from the University of Hawaii Community College system, Erica Lockrow. So we are going to be faced with some choices, because budget's about choices, that would really help us sustain and continue our support island-wide. And so the kinds of choices we have to make will be impacted everywhere from our campuses. And so we're doing our best to really prioritize what that could mean in terms of services, whether those are personnel or our operating expenses and priorities. In addition to that, I also want to kind of look forward. So there are definitely some grant opportunities, and under Director Kayleen Surf, Co-Education Center has been really aggressive about pursuing grants and contract opportunities. And so despite maybe the fact that we may be looking into state allocation reductions, lower tuition revenues before we hopefully see a surge, we can look upon grants and contracts to help us kind of buffer and still continue to invest in the future. So, but I don't have any details of any kind of budget cuts at this point. It's so preliminary. We're waiting for legislative input, related governor's input, and certainly the legislators. But there will be some reductions. We don't know the magnitude and the kinds of decision we have to move forward. There are positions that are frozen right now, and that's statewide, and that impacts certainly positions at CO and all other positions that we have at the college.
Thank you, Doctor. I know we're a little past 7 here, so I didn't want to keep everyone on too much longer, but I just wanted to thank all of our presenters. First of all, we received a lot of questions, and we're unfortunately able to get to all of them, but I could share them with you, and if you'd like to answer them in some form, in some format, we could do so. Before we close tonight's meeting, I just once again thank everyone for joining us. I have a couple announcements for the Waimea Community Association. We will be holding a special town meeting on May 21st, Thursday, May 21st. Our guest will be AES Distributed Energy to discuss the Waikoloa solar energy project that's happening there. We thought an opportune time to talk about different infrastructure projects and green energy. So we're welcoming them and talking to them in this format here. We'll be casting it up on Facebook and other platforms if possible. We'll also be planning to host our June meetings. We'll be hosting our candidate forums in June and July, as we typically do on election cycle years. For our June agenda, we're looking at potentially 3 days. We have a full slate of candidates for our mayoral seat for the Big Island. And we possibly will be hosting on 3 different days in this similar format, more or less a mock interview. So stay tuned for more information about that. And we may hold one other seat race during that month as well. And then in July, we will tackle some of the other races that are happening then. So it'll be some similar format to this. We'll accept pre-submitted questions and hopefully join you online. So that's kind of our plan going forward.
James,
Yes, Senator.
I just want to add, because they are probably some of our constituents out there, the Senate, when we return to the Capitol, we will be confirming all the boards and commission members. It has to be confirmed by the Senate. So all those who have already been asked to serve on commissions, we do need to meet and confirm them. Otherwise, they won't be able to serve. There's a large number of our residents on our Big Island that have applied for boards and commissions. So just to add that it won't be, they won't be there in attendance. However, we are making sure that those confirmations move slowly as well.
Thank you, Senator. Yes, I know there's much more all of you can say, all of your monologue that all of you have. Really wish I could spend more time with you online. I didn't want to keep you too late, but I really appreciate you all being here. Mahalo to you, to your families, for you spending your time with us. So thank you for joining us, and your commitment to our community, your dedication to all that you do, and the support during this tumultuous time. So much appreciative there. And so on behalf of the WCA board, I wish you all good health and a nice Mother's Day weekend. So stay safe, be well, aloha. Have a good
Thank you.
Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.